Hello, jewelry friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Jewelry Resellers podcast. My name is Desiree, and I am your jewelry reselling bestie. Today's episode is going to be part two in a three-part series that I am doing for beginner jewelry resellers. If you remember last week in part one, we covered in depth the whole category of sourcing jewelry in order to have the inventory you need in order to make this business work. All right, we went into great detail on that. And so if you have not watched that episode, I highly recommend you do before you watch this one. But of course, it's not required. But I will link that episode here for you on the video or in the show notes if you're listening. And then that way you can be all caught up. All right. So, like I said, today is part two in a three-part series on how to get started in jewelry reselling. And this is a series that I'm doing if you are a complete beginner as it relates to this type of reselling. I know usually a lot of people come to me and they say, "Hey, I've been, reselling for a while, but I'm just getting started now in jewelry." And so I find that your content is helping me to figure this out. And that is the purpose and the goal and the intention of this podcast. So I'm going to do whatever I can, give you all of the information and the nuggets that I have learned over the years so you can make this work, because I know a lot of us have the goal of being a full-time jewelry reseller. It's not easy, but being a full-time reseller just in general really isn't easy. And it does take work. It does take consistency, and it will take some investment on your part to learn what needs to be done in order to make your jewelry reselling business exactly what you want it to be. All right, so today we are going to cover selling, which means that we are going to focus on how are we going to get our jewelry pieces into the hands of the people that want it. Okay. And I know it sounds like a simple concept, but it does have a lot of variations. It does have a lot of things that we need to consider, because selling is more than just making the sale. There's things that happen before, there's things that happen afterwards. So today, we are going to talk about selling our jewelry. All right. And if you remember from part one, I broke down that as it relates to having a successful jewelry reselling business, there are three component categories that you need to develop a system for. And when I say develop a system for, this is a scheduled routine of habits, practices, disciplines, things that you do consistently, things that you do either on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So that way your business has what it needs to function optimally. And it also gives you the highest income potential. All right. So these are things that you need to master in some way, shape, or form in order to have a successful jewelry reselling business. And if you remember, those three component categories are sourcing, number one. Number two is selling. And then next week, we are going to talk about part three, which is service and shipping. All right. So, like I said, you need a system for each of these components of your jewelry reselling business. So, I also have a quick announcement. Now, this is something that I've been working on for the past few months, only because a lot of you have asked me about this. And I have just released a new resource that I hope is going to help you as it relates to being a jewelry reseller. And it is the Jewelry's Reseller's Guide to cleaning, storing, and organizing your jewelry. All right, this is a 46-page ebook that I have been working on very diligently, and I have tried to include as much information as possible as it relates to cleaning, storing, and organizing your jewelry inventory. All right, so I am offering a 15% discount because this is a newly launched digital product. And the link will be in the description as well as the show notes. And you can can use discount code Jewelry15 and you can get 15% off of this ebook for a limited time. Like I said, I'm very excited about it and I can't wait to hear what you think. And so many of you have asked, how can you support me or how can you support this podcast? And this is one way. This is one way that I would be so grateful if you would like to check this ebook out. Of course, you don't have to, but it comes as a result of being asked a lot of these types of questions as it relates to cleaning jewelry. People ask, how do I store my jewelry and how do you organize your jewelry? Because you do need to figure all of that out, right? When you're trying to sell large quantities of jewelry. Some of us sell hundreds of pieces of jewelry every month. Some of us sell thousands of pieces of jewelry every month. All right. So again, I will have the link to that guide in the description and in the show notes if you are interested. I also just published a blog post that goes into detail, and I will link that in the description and show notes for you as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's topic. And you know how I always have my notes because we have a lot to cover today. And I'm going to try and do this in what I think is the easiest way to grasp this information because we don't need to overcomplicate things, right? Reselling in general is already a proven business model that works. It's already something that a lot of us know how to do. It's just a matter of making a few tweaks here and there so we can apply some of the reselling strategies we already know to jewelry. And then it also gives us a little bit of flexibility to apply some new strategies or some new ideas as it relates to reselling jewelry, either part-time, full-time, or whatever whatever works for you. All right, so the first thing I want you to think about as it relates to selling or reselling jewelry is it's really about making decisions and then following through with those decisions. All right, so it's about making the decisions of, what, who, where, when, why, and how as it relates to your jewelry reselling business. And then making adjustments as you go because the decisions you make today may or may not necessarily be decisions that work for you in the short term, long term, because this is something that you really don't know how it's going to be structured or what's going to work for you until you actually do it, right? Some of us may have big goals of listing 100 jewelry pieces a day, and then some of us may be thankful that we can get 2 listings done a day. All right. And it can work either way. Now, of course, depending on how much money you want to make and what your goals are, you will have to develop that over time and things will change as your lifestyle changes or maybe as your business changes. All right. So we are going to talk about the what, we are going to talk about the who. We're also going to cover where. We're going to talk about when, how, and why as it relates to jewelry reselling. And this is, like I said, coming from the perspective of selling. Okay, this is how we are going to actually sell our jewelry. All right, so when we talk about the what, obviously this is jewelry. Okay, we talked about in the sourcing episode how we're going to find those pieces. And this is going to be contingent upon education, knowledge, and being informative about what sells. Okay, so once we get to this selling part of our business, we already know because we've already done the research, we've already done the studies, we've already done the comparisons, and we've already looked at the data. So we know what type of jewelry we're going to sell, and we know roughly about how much we are going to sell that jewelry for. All right. Again, this is not anything that's limited. You can always make adjustments, but you want to have a fair idea of what you want your average selling price to be when it comes to your jewelry pieces. Now, you may have some jewelry pieces where the average sales price could be $20, and then you may have other pieces where your average sale price could be $50, $75, or a few $100s. Again, it just depends on the type of jewelry that you're selling. And this takes me to my next point, who you are selling that jewelry to. Who is your ideal customer? who is the target buyer that you know would absolutely love the jewelry that you have, especially who is going to be eager to buy the jewelry you have at the price that you're selling it at. All right. So, again, this is going to take some research. This is going to take maybe a little bit of time for you to figure out. Now, the one thing, though, I do want to throw in there is that a lot of resellers just kind of cast a wide net, right? We don't necessarily target specific buyers per se. We put our stuff up on eBay or wherever, and then it's kind of whoever's looking for it. That's who that's who we want to sell it to. And while that approach may work, if you are looking to branch out of the eBay platform, maybe you want to sell other places, maybe you want to create a whole brand, maybe you want to do targeted shows or marketing strategies to reach particular people, you still want to have an idea of who you're selling your jewelry to. Okay. And again, this could change as your business changes or even as your inventory changes, but you need to have a clear idea about this. And, this is something where, like, I have a few regular customers who want something specific. And whenever I have the specific type of jewelry they're looking for, they are ready to be first in line to buy. And so over time, you probably will have something very similar with the type of buyers that you are targeting. All right. And all the jewelry resellers I know usually have at least one or two regulars where they know what they're looking for. They know what they want. They know about how much they want to pay for it. And so these are our golden customers, so to speak. These are the ones that we want to make sure we take care of and we nurture and we communicate and maintain that relationship with. All right. And this all goes, like I said, underneath this selling umbrella. All right. So this also leads me into my next part, which is the where. Where are you going to sell your jewelry? Are you only going to do this online on the various platforms that are available? Or are you going to do maybe some things offline? Or are you going to do a hybrid approach of the two? Now, that is what I do. That is what I recommend. That is what I enjoy. But remember, you can set this up however it's going to work for you. All right. If you only want to sell offline, maybe at craft fairs or in boutiques, under consignment, like whatever, you can make it work. You really can. All right. And then sometimes you may have certain times throughout the year where you only sell online because that is what's working for you. I'm going to say probably about 80% of the resellers I know strictly only sell online, and that's totally fine. You can make a crap load of money doing that, and you don't have to limit yourself as it relates to online sales. Now, the other thing, when we think about where we're going to sell, we have to make sure that we're uh, thinking about the specific platforms that we want to showcase our jewelry on. I've already talked about eBay. That's going to work for the majority of people, but that's not the only platform in town. I've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast. There's Poshmark, there's Mercari, there is Etsy, there's Facebook Marketplace, there's also Facebook groups. Um, there's probably way more that I can't even remember. There's also the live selling aspect, right? There's Whatnot, there is District, there is Jamble, there is, I think it's called Pop Shop Live, is another one, and there's probably going to be more. There's TikTok, there's social media. All right, so you are really limited only by what you can realistically handle. All right. And you can kind of bounce between these different platforms and different modalities depending on what works for you. As a beginner, though, if you have never done this before, I'm going to say start with something easy like eBay, like Poshmark. I would say those are the two where I have sold the most jewelry pieces in my jewelry reselling career, eBay being number one. And then I've sold quite a bit of jewelry on Poshmark as well, both through static listings and live shows. All right. And then third for me probably would be Whatnot and District. I've sold quite a few jewelry pieces there, and that's in the live selling format. That's what I enjoy, and you're going to have to figure out what you enjoy, what you can manage, what you have time for. All right, so think about that as it relates to where you're going to sell your jewelry. And again, you can also do pop up shops. You can do a little, I think I've shared this before where I know a woman who sells jewelry at her 9 to 5. All right, like she sets up in the break room or something like that, and she sells her jewelry during lunch or after or before work. So you really can do whatever. All right. Now, the other thing that you want to think about that I have in my notes is creating your unique selling proposition. What makes you different? What sets you apart? Because that could dictate the platform that you sell your jewelry on as well. All right. Are you somebody like me who likes to go live, who likes to talk and connect with people? Or are you a little bit more, no, you don't want to be that social. You just want to get the listings up and keep it moving. All right. Whatever your style of selling is, I'm telling you, it can work in this business. It's just a matter of you figuring it out and going back to what I said earlier, making the decision and then following through on that. Right. But I do believe that, having a unique selling proposition really does help because people tend to feel like they know you and then they really like you and then they trust you. All right. And that is key in selling relationships or even just in relationships, in general. All right. So, like, for example, my unique selling proposition is that I am a podcaster and I am a content creator. And so I know a lot of you know me from the podcast or, YouTube or wherever. And so that kind of allows me to stand out when I'm selling my jewelry pieces because a lot of people feel like they already know me, from those places, social media sites or whatever. All right. Now, that's not the only I guess advantage that I have. I like to I like to believe that I'm bringing you some amazing jewelry pieces as well. But you'll have to figure out what your unique selling proposition is. What is your unique advantage? What is the thing that you do or offer differently from anybody else in the marketplace? Because as we know, online selling, reselling in particular, is very noisy. There's a lot of people doing this. Doesn't mean they're all doing it well, and it doesn't mean that there isn't room if you are brand new. But how are we going to make ourselves stand out from all the other hundreds or thousands of other jewelry resellers, selling the same or similar types of jewelry pieces? Okay, so think about that as well. Now, the other thing we want to think about is pricing when it comes to certain platforms. Like, depending on what type of jewelry you're selling, eBay, you pretty much can, like, any cost of jewelry can do well there. All right. But if you tend to have higher end pieces, you may want to try something like Ruby Lane. You may want to try something like First Dibs, those types of platforms. If you're on the lower end of the scale, the jewelry pricing scale, you probably could get away with selling things on Mercari or even Poshmark, depending on what it is. So think about, again, your average sale price, like how much you want to sell your jewelry for. Because if you want to command higher prices, you need to go on some of these platforms where that makes sense. All right. Like I said, eBay, you pretty much can do any pricing. But on some of these other platforms, like Mercari, it's going to be really tough to sell higher end luxury jewelry there. I'm not saying you can't, but that particular marketplace doesn't necessarily do well for the higher end luxury pieces. All right, so this is something that you're going to have to figure out, and you're going to have to be very diligent on too. And you can also experiment, right? You can also experiment and see where your pieces do well. You can look at the data and the analytics and see. Um, where your pieces tend to get the most traffic, and then ultimately, which platform is giving you the most sales. But again, that'll take time for you to figure out. So if you're just getting started, like I said, I would recommend eBay just until you kind of figure out your own system and strategy, and then you can branch out from there. All right. Okay, so we talked about the where. Now we're going to talk about when. How often will you sell this jewelry? Now, the nice thing about selling online is that basically our jewelry is for sale 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays included, right? Once we have those listings up, we pretty much can sell our jewelry anytime. We can even make money while we're asleep, while we're on vacation, while we are cleaning our house, whatever. You can make money if you have listings up all the time, right? Those listings can sell. All right. But the thing is if you're going to do other things like live selling, or if you're going to do in person events or pop up shops or things like that, you need to schedule when you're going to do those events or selling activities. All right. Now, the other thing we have to think about when it comes to when is when are we going to schedule our listings, or when are we going to do our photos and do our actual listings? All right. It's not just about the time it takes to do a live show, it's also about the prep that goes into that live show, right? That could take another hour, 2 hours, whatever. All right. If you're not selling live selling, like what I like to do, if you're only focused on online selling, then you have to figure out, well, how much time a day do I have to do my listings? How much time do I have to do my photos? All right. How much time is that going to take me daily, weekly? All right. And I know a lot of us are familiar with the whole draft bank concept. All right. This is something that I think has become more normal as it relates to reselling. All right. But this is something that you are going to have to take into consideration as well. Are you going to do 50 listings every week and then keep them in draft status and then publish 5 listings a day or something like that? Like, what is going to be your system for posting new listings every single day, or posting new listings 5 days a week, or however you decide it's going to work for you? Okay, so that takes some planning, that takes some scheduling, and that takes some figuring out. All right, if you're just getting started, I would say reasonably 5 listings a day is good. All right. But again, depending on what your goals are, how much money you want to make, what your average sales price is, all right, you've got to make sure that your listings match the goal criteria that you have set for yourself and for your business. So, let's say your average sales price is $20. You're selling a $20 necklace, bracelet, whatever, and your goal is to make $100 a day. All right, then you need to make sure that you are listing at least 5 items a day with an average sales price of $20. All right. Now, you're not going to have a 100% sell through. That's pretty much impossible to do. So, what I would do, I would probably list 10 items per day with a $20 average sales price, right? Because theoretically, if they all sell, that's going to give me what? I'm not good at math, but you know what I mean. Like, uh, 20 times 10, that's going to give us $200, right? $200. Yay, I figured that out. All right, so that's going to give us a $200 income potential with the 10 listings we're publishing each day. All right, but remember, if the goal is 100, we want to make sure that we kind of overshoot that in how much we're listing per day. All right, I know this probably sounds complicated, but it's really not. I'm not good at math, and you saw that I was able to figure it out on the spot just now. So, whatever your daily income goal is, make sure you are listing enough jewelry pieces to double that. All right, because you want to take into consideration that you're probably not going to list 5 and sell 5 pieces every single day. probably just won't happen. Okay, so whatever your numbers are, whatever makes sense for you, whatever your goals are, that's what you need to figure out. Okay, and then you need to plan accordingly. Plan your listings accordingly, and then plan the time to do the listings accordingly. Okay. All right. So we've talked about what, who, where, when. Now we're going to talk about how. All right. How are we going to sell our jewelry to the people that want to buy it? Are we going to do this through static listings, like I talked about, where you just have listings on eBay and people can shop those listings? All right. Or are you going to do live shows like I like to do and people can buy during your live show? Are you going to do a hybrid of the two? Are you going to sell maybe on social media, right? And do a YouTube video showcasing your jewelry pieces, or maybe some Instagram posts or Instagram reels or TikTok, whatever. How are you going to sell your jewelry? All right. So, and this is something that it may take you some time to figure out, because you're going to have to experiment what works, what doesn't, what you like, what don't you like, what you have time for, and what you don't have time for. Okay, so figure out the how. And again, this is just a matter of making decisions that work and then adjusting as we need to as we move forward. Finally, I want to talk about the why. Now, of course, I make no apologies that, I am a jewelry reseller to make money. And I think all of us are in this to make money. Now, surprisingly, though, there's been quite a few people that I've talked to where they have said, they're really not doing this to make money. They just love jewelry. They're passionate about jewelry. They have collected and learned about jewelry over the years, and they just kind of sell jewelry for fun, right? Not necessarily trying to earn a living off of this or make this be something sustainable to where it's a business that does allow you to pay the bills, take care of your family, whatever the case may be. All right, so there's no wrong answer as it relates to why you want to sell your jewelry. But I do want you to get clear on your why, because it will help you when you go through those challenging times. And I'm telling you, we all do. You're going to have days where nothing sells. You're going to have days where, somebody gets mad or thinks, you sent them the wrong thing, or complains about something, whatever. You are going to have challenges as it relates to doing this. And if you can be committed to the why, then those challenges just become um, not that they don't matter and not that they don't bother you, but they don't become something that totally takes you out the game. It your why will always override any type of challenge, because you know that you are being driven and motivated by a bigger purpose. All right. And I really want to stress that, because I have had some challenging moments as a reseller. And even now, I still have days where I think that, why am I doing this? Do I want to do this? You have days where you feel burnt out or you're just over it. That's totally normal on this journey. But like I said, um, once you get really clear and committed on your why, then it really gives you the tenacity to keep going. All right. And, if you need to take a break, that's fine too. All right. Again, it's a matter of what you want your business to be, how you want to run your business, right? And what are the goals that you are striving for? All right, so we've talked about the what, jewelry, beautiful jewelry that is in demand. We talked about who is our ideal customer. We also talked about where we're going to be selling our jewelry, what platform, online or off. We talked about when we're going to be selling our jewelry. Is this something that you're going to do daily? Is this something you're going to do weekly? Is this something you're going to do monthly? Depending on the format that you're selling your jewelry. How? How are you selling your jewelry? Static listings, live shows, in person events, whatever. And then lastly, we covered the why. What is our intention behind our jewelry reselling business, or maybe just our reselling business in general? Okay, so these are the things we have to think about as it relates to this big selling umbrella for our jewelry. And as time goes on, I really want you to understand and accept that things will change. The decisions you make today may not be the same decisions you make a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. All right, give yourself permission to be flexible with this. Give yourself the freedom and the space to change your mind as you learn more and as you grow and as you get more comfortable doing this. All right, because there's no law saying that you have to do this a certain way, or you have to follow a particular person's method, or you have to listen to a certain, I don't know, anything as it relates to doing this. And remember, I am not the authority on this either. I am not the end all be all as it relates to jewelry reselling. But I do want to give you a resource, and I do want to give you as much support and information that I can to help you make these decisions on your own, and not feeling like you have to be locked into doing things a certain way, because you really don't. All right, and some of us may do this in addition to other things that we're reselling. It may not be the only thing that we're doing. All right, so let me make sure I have covered everything that I want to cover in this episode. So now, one thing I have here in my notes is about optimizing your listings. All right, writing effective descriptions. All right, this is something that you're going to need to learn and practice. All right, making sure your descriptions are keyword rich and SEO friendly. All right, they don't have to be long paragraphs, but you do want to have at least a few sentences explaining what the piece is and any details that may be relevant to the jewelry piece itself, flaws and sizes, if that is applicable. Um, some I've seen some people add like a little bit of history or backstory to the jewelry piece, if it makes sense. In my opinion, this is what has worked for me over the years, in the sense that the more that I'm asking for price, or like the more expensive the jewelry piece is, then the more details I like to give about it. Because if I'm asking $200-300 for a piece, or even more, then I know the person spending that much wants to know as much about the jewelry piece as possible, right? But if I'm selling a little $20 necklace, they don't need a whole lot of detail about that. Usually the photos are self-sufficient, or, a sentence or two is more than enough to describe the details of something like that. But if I have a really high-end piece, then I'm gonna put a little bit more time and effort into um, describing that piece and giving as much detail as I possibly can, because I want someone to make an informed decision when they are investing in that jewelry piece. All right. And I want to make sure that there's no surprises, and that I give them as much information as possible to make that buying decision. All right. The other thing is photography. I think this is something that a lot of us struggle with. Even I still struggle with that. I use natural lighting, but when I want to get really detailed up close photos, I struggle with that. And there's some ways to kind of navigate that, but I think this is something that the more you do, the better you get at it. So a lot of us use our phones. Some of us use cameras. Better cameras than what's on our phone. Again, you're just going to have to figure out what works for you as it relates to your skill set, and then as it relates to the time. Because if you're going to edit photos, or if you're going to, remove backgrounds and all of that stuff, those are a few, extra steps that could interfere with your processing time or your listing time or whatever. I know in eBay, they do have some tools to help make it easier. Like you can crop, I think you can remove the background or change the background, whatever. So that could be helpful for some of you. And then some of us, we just use our phone, we have a white background and we do the best we can. And that's the best we can do. All right. But like I said, I think this is something the more you do it, the better you will get. All right, we talked about the different platforms and diversifying on different or multiple platforms. I know not everybody is, I guess, a fan of selling on multiple platforms. It's what I do. I think I've done a podcast episode saying I think you should. All right. But again, this takes a little bit of time management. It takes, being on top of your business and making sure that you delist that item off of other platforms when it sells on one. All right. You need to be on top of that. All right. But I do believe that you are going to, get the best chance of making a sale when you list on multiple platforms. And I currently do. And I haven't had any issues, knock on wood. So it's a strategy or a tip that I do recommend. Okay, so I think that is going to be it for this episode. Like I said, I tried to be as thorough and as give you as much information as possible because I know how overwhelming this could be. And if you're a beginner, do your best, right? But keep doing what you're doing because you will get good at this, right? And I learn every single day. And I think it's, I say this all the time that the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. And so I just want to encourage you, if you are getting started with this, you're never going to learn everything, but you're going to be more knowledgeable than you realize just by doing the things you need to do in order to be a jewelry reseller. You're going to learn so much about eBay. You're going to learn so much about vintage jewelry. You're going to learn so much about gemstones and silver and all of these things. So, um, be gentle with yourself and try not to get too overwhelmed too quickly. All right. So, if there is anything that maybe I did not cover in this episode, or if there is anything that maybe I missed and you'd like me to do another follow-up episode, please don't hesitate to let me know. You can leave me a comment. You can send me an email or a message. You can head on over to the website. I do have a contact page, and that's jewelryresellerspodcast.com. You can also tag me on social media at Jewelry Resellers Podcast because I'm always open to hearing your feedback. I'm always open to figuring out and learning what you want so I can help you get the information that you need. All right, so this is the end of part 2 of a 3-part series of jewelry reselling for beginners. We've done part 1, which is sourcing, and this episode is part 2, which is selling. All right, for part 3, we are going to do a deep dive on service and shipping as it relates to jewelry reselling for beginners, because I know that could be a whole thing in and of itself as well. But we're going to have to create a system for that, just like we're creating systems for sourcing. We create a system for selling. We're going to create a system for service and shipping. And this is probably the easiest component category of the 3, because it's just a matter of you being attentive to the needs of your buyers. And then it's just a matter of you learning how to ship in a very effective and profitable way, or cost effective way, I guess, because like I said, we don't want to overcharge or undercharge our customers. So we're going to talk all about that in next week's podcast episode. All right, jewelry friends, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll check in with you again really soon.